Sarah Martinez adjusted her designer blazer as she stepped out of her sleek black BMW in front of Sunshine Elementary School. At 38, she had built herself into one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the city, running a company worth millions. Her perfectly styled auburn hair caught the afternoon sunlight, and her confident stride commanded attention from other parents in the pickup line. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was supposed to be her assistant's job, but Maria had called in sick, and Sarah's sister Emma was stuck in traffic. So here she was, the CEO of Technovision Solutions, standing among minivans and SUVs, waiting to pick up her 6-year-old nephew Jake. Sarah checked her diamond-encrusted watch impatiently. She had a conference call with investors from Japan in an hour, and traffic back to downtown would be brutal. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails about quarterly reports and merger proposals, trying to make good use of the waiting time. The school bell rang, and within minutes, children began pouring out of the building like colorful confetti. Sarah scanned the crowd looking for Jake's familiar messy brown hair and superhero backpack. She had been helping Emma with childcare more often lately, especially since Emma's husband had been deployed overseas with the military. As she waited, Sarah noticed a little girl with golden blonde curls standing alone by the school steps. The child looked to be about 5 or 6 years old, wearing a faded pink dress that had seen better days and clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Unlike the other children who were running toward waiting cars or chatting excitedly with friends, this little girl stood perfectly still, her big blue eyes scanning the pickup area with a mix of hope and worry. Sarah found herself drawn to the child's solitary figure. There was something hauntingly familiar about those eyes, though she couldn't place what it was. The little girl's face held a maturity that seemed beyond her years, as if she had learned to be patient in situations where other children might throw tantrums. Minutes passed, and still no one came for the blonde girl. Sarah watched as teachers began to notice the child as well, approaching her with gentle smiles and concerned looks. She could see them asking questions, probably trying to figure out where the girl's parents were. Just then, Jake came bounding out of the building, his backpack bouncing against his small frame. His face lit up when he saw Sarah waiting for him, and he ran over with the boundless energy that only 6-year-olds possess. "Aunt Sarah, you came to get me," Jake exclaimed, throwing his arms around her waist. "Mom said you might be too busy with work stuff." Sarah smiled down at her nephew, ruffling his already messy hair. "I'm never too busy for you, kiddo. How was school today?" "It was good. We learned about dinosaurs, and Mrs. Peterson said that T-Rex arms weren't actually that small compared to their bodies. They were just small compared to the rest of them, which is totally different." Jake chattered excitedly as they walked toward the car. As they passed the school steps, Sarah's attention was drawn back to the little blonde girl who was now sitting on the concrete steps with a teacher kneeling beside her. The woman appeared to be making phone calls, probably trying to reach the child's parents or guardians. Sarah paused, something tugging at her heartstrings. "Jake, do you know that little girl over there, the one with the blonde hair?" Jake followed, her gaze, and nodded. "That's Lucy. She's in kindergarten. She's really quiet, but she's nice. Sometimes she sits alone at lunch." "What about her parents? Do they usually pick her up?" Jake shrugged with the casual indifference of childhood. "I think her grandma usually comes, but sometimes she has to wait a really long time. Tommy from my class says Lucy lives with her grandma because her mom went away." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy for the child. She knew what it was like to feel abandoned. Though her own childhood experiences were buried deep in memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. She had built walls around those early years, focusing instead on her success and achievements. As they reached the car, Sarah couldn't shake the image of Lucy sitting alone on those steps. She buckled Jake into his booster seat and started the engine. But instead of pulling away immediately, she found herself glancing back at the school entrance. The teacher was still with Lucy, and now the school principal had joined them. Sarah recognized the woman from various school events she had attended with Emma. Principal Williams was known for her caring nature and dedication to her students. "Aunt Sarah, are we going to sit here forever?" Jake asked from the back seat. "I'm hungry, and you promised we could stop for ice cream if I was good today." "Right, sorry, kiddo. Sarah said, shaking herself from her thoughts. She put the car in drive and began to pull out of the parking space, but as they passed the school entrance, something extraordinary happened. Lucy looked up from where she sat with the adults, and her eyes met Sarah's through the car window. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The little girl's face transformed, lighting up with an expression of pure recognition and joy. She jumped to her feet, pulling away from the surprised teacher's gentle grip. "Mommy?" Lucy called out, her voice clear and strong despite the distance. "Mommy?" Sarah slammed on the brakes, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Jake lurched forward slightly in his car seat, confusion written across his face. "Aunt Sarah, what's wrong? Why did that girl call you Mommy?" Sarah sat frozen, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The little girl was now running toward their car, tears streaming down her face, the stuffed rabbit bouncing in her arms. Principal Williams and the teacher were hurrying after her, clearly bewildered by the sudden turn of events. "Mommy, don't leave me again," Lucy cried, reaching the car and pressing her small hands against the passenger window. "I've been waiting for you. I've been so good, just like you told me to be." Sarah stared at the child through the glass, her mind reeling. This was impossible. This had to be some kind of mistake. She had never seen this child before in her life, had never been a mother, had never even been pregnant. Her successful, carefully planned life had no room for such complications. But as she looked into Lucy's tear-filled blue eyes, something deep in her memory stirred, like a door that had been locked for years suddenly rattling on its hinges. Sarah's hands trembled as she slowly rolled down the passenger window. Lucy's small fingers immediately reached through the opening, as if trying to touch her face to make sure she was real. "Please don't go," Lucy whispered, her voice breaking. "I promise I'll be better. I won't cry at night anymore, and I'll eat all my vegetables, and I'll brush my teeth without being reminded." Principal Williams arrived at the car, slightly out of breath and clearly flustered. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Martinez. I don't know what's gotten into Lucy. She's usually such a well-behaved child." "Lucy, sweetheart, this lady isn't your mommy. We've talked about this before." But Lucy shook her head vigorously, her blonde curls bouncing. "She is my mommy. I remember her smell, and her voice, and the way she used to sing to me. Tell them, Mommy. Tell them you remember me." Sarah felt like she was drowning in confusion and panic. Every rational part of her brain insisted this was impossible. But something deeper, something she had buried long ago, was clawing its way to the surface of her consciousness. I think there's been a mistake," Sarah managed to say, though her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "I've never met this child before." Jake leaned forward from his car seat, his young face creased with concern. "Aunt Sarah, why is she crying? Why does she think you're her mom?" Principal Williams gently placed her hands on Lucy's shoulders, trying to guide her away from the car. "Lucy, remember what we talked about. Your grandmother will be here soon. She just got held up at work." "But that's my mommy," Lucy protested, pointing at Sarah. "She has the same eyes as me. Look." Despite herself, Sarah found herself really looking at the child for the first time. Lucy was right. They did have remarkably similar eyes. The same unusual shade of blue-green, the same shape, even the same small freckle just below the left eyebrow that Sarah had always considered her distinguishing feature. "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I need to go. I have important meetings." She started to roll up the window, but Lucy's desperate voice stopped her. "You sang to me," Lucy said softly, her small hand pressed against the glass. "You used to sing Rainbow Connection when I couldn't sleep, and you had a scar on your hand from when you burned yourself making me pancakes on my birthday." Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked down at her right hand, where a small crescent-shaped scar marked her palm, a scar she had gotten from grabbing a hot pan handle. But that had been years ago when she was. Suddenly, fragments of memories began crashing over her like waves. A tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper, the smell of baby powder and formula, Sleepless nights walking the floor, with a crying infant, the weight of responsibility that had felt crushing to her 19-year-old shoulders. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This can't be happening." Principal Williams was speaking, but her words sounded like they were coming from underwater. "Lucy has been with her grandmother since she was about 2 years old. She sometimes has these episodes where she thinks she sees her mother, but the grandmother says her daughter gave up parental rights and moved away years ago." The world tilted sideways. Sarah gripped the steering wheel harder, trying to anchor herself to reality. She had built her entire adult life on the foundation of leaving her past behind, of becoming someone completely new. She had reinvented herself so thoroughly that she had almost convinced herself that the girl she used to be had never existed. But that girl had existed. That girl had been Sarah Jenkins, not Sarah Martinez. That girl had been a frightened teenager who had made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. "Aunt Sarah, you look really pale," Jake said, his voice cutting through the fog in her mind. "Are you sick?" Lucy was still at the window, her face pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. "I knew you'd come back," she said, with the absolute faith that only children possess. "Grandma said you might never come back, but I knew you would. I've been practicing being good so you'd want to keep me this time." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She remembered now, remembered the social worker, the papers, the promises that Lucy would be better off with someone who could provide stability. She remembered signing away her rights to the beautiful baby girl she had loved but couldn't care for. "I need to make a phone call," Sarah said abruptly to Principal Williams. Could you give me a few minutes?" The principal looked uncertain but nodded. "Of course, Lucy, why don't we go back inside and wait for your grandmother? I'm sure she'll be here soon." "No!" Lucy cried out, clinging to the car door handle. "Please don't make me go. I've been waiting so long." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 18 years of buried guilt and pain settling on her shoulders. When she opened them again, Lucy was still there, still looking at her with those familiar eyes filled with hope and desperation. "5 minutes," Sarah told Principal Williams. "Just give me 5 minutes to figure this out." The principal hesitated but eventually nodded, gently coaxing Lucy to step back from the car. "We'll wait right here on the steps, okay, Lucy? We won't go anywhere." Sarah pulled her phone from her purse with shaking hands and dialed the one person who knew her entire story, her sister Emma. The phone rang 3 times before Emma's voice came through. "Sarah, is everything okay? You sound strange." "Emma, I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happened to my daughter?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice gentle but cautious. "Sarah, we agreed we would never talk about this. You said you wanted to put it behind you completely." "She's here, Emma. She's right here in front of me, and she knows who I am. A little girl named Lucy, and she's calling me Mommy, and God, Emma, I think I've been lying to myself for 18 years. Emma's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. "Oh my God. Sarah, are you sure? I mean, how could she possibly? You said the adoption was closed, that there would never be any contact." "I thought it was closed too, but something went wrong. Something happened, and now she's living with her grandmother. And Emma, she looks exactly like I did at that age. She has my eyes, my freckles, she even knows about my scar." Through the windshield, Sarah watched Lucy sitting on the school steps, clutching her stuffed rabbit and staring at the car with unwavering hope. Principal Williams was making phone calls, probably trying to reach Lucy's grandmother and figure out what to do about this unprecedented situation. "What are you going to do?" Emma asked softly. Sarah didn't have an answer. How could she explain that she had spent nearly 2 decades building a life that had no room for the biggest mistake and the greatest love of her teenage years? How could she tell this child that she had given her away not because she didn't love her, but because she had loved her enough to want better for her than what a frightened 19-year-old could provide? Sarah ended the call with Emma and sat in her car, watching Lucy through the windshield. The little girl hadn't moved from the steps, her eyes never leaving Sarah's car. Principal Williams was still on her phone, pacing back and forth with increasing agitation. Jake's voice broke the silence from the back seat. "Aunt Sarah, I don't understand what's happening. Why did that girl call you Mommy? And why do you look so scared?" Sarah turned to face her nephew, this innocent child who had never known anything but stability and love. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? Sometimes, Jake, grown-ups make very hard decisions that they think are right at the time, but those decisions can have consequences that last for many years, she said carefully. That little girl might be someone very special that I knew a long time ago before I became your aunt. Jake's eyes widened. You mean she might really be, like, my cousin? Before Sarah could answer, Principal Williams approached the car again, her expression grave. "Ms. Martinez, I've been trying to reach Lucy's grandmother, Mrs. Helen Patterson, but she's not answering her phone. However, I did speak with our school counselor, who has been working with Lucy since she started here. She says Lucy often talks about her mother and some of the details she's mentioned. Well, they might match some things about you." Sarah's heart pounded. "What kind of details?" "She's mentioned that her mother was very young when she was born, that she had reddish hair, that she was very smart and wanted to go to college. She's also said her mother had a small scar on her hand and used to work at a coffee shop." Principal Williams paused. "Ms. Martinez, did you ever work at a coffee shop?" The memory hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Java Junction downtown, where she had worked double shifts while pregnant, saving every penny for the baby. The manager who had been kind enough to let her work until she was almost ready to give birth. The regular customers who had started leaving extra tips when they noticed she was struggling. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Principal Williams leaned closer to the car window. "Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you directly. Is there any possibility that Lucy could be your daughter?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Sarah looked at Lucy, who was still watching her with those heartbreakingly hopeful eyes, and felt 18 years of carefully constructed walls crumbling around her. I gave birth to a daughter when I was 19, Sarah said quietly. But I signed adoption papers. She was supposed to go to a family who could give her everything I couldn't. What happened to the adoptive family? Principal Williams asked gently. I don't know. The adoption was supposed to be closed. I was never supposed to see her again. Sarah's voice cracked. I thought it was better that way. Jake leaned forward, his young face serious. Aunt Sarah, if she's really your daughter, does that mean she's been waiting for you all this time? Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah looked at her nephew, this wise little boy who had somehow cut straight to the heart of the matter. Had Lucy been waiting? Had she spent 6 years of her life wondering why her mother had left her? Principal Williams cleared her throat. Ms. Martinez, Lucy's grandmother should be here soon. Perhaps you'd be willing to wait and speak with her. I think there are some questions that need answers, for everyone's sake. Sarah nodded slowly. She called her office and canceled her conference call, something she would never have done before today. Her assistant would be shocked, but some things were more important than Japanese investors. 20 minutes later, an older woman with graying hair and tired eyes hurried up to the school entrance. Sarah recognized something in her posture, the way she carried herself, the weight of responsibility of raising a child when you thought those days were behind you. Helen Patterson spotted Lucy immediately and rushed over to embrace her. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. The bus was late and then there was an accident on 5th Street. I tried to call the school, but my phone died. Lucy hugged her grandmother but kept looking over at Sarah's car. Grandma, my mommy came back. She's right there in that car. Helen followed Lucy's gaze, and when her eyes met Sarah's through the windshield, something passed between them. A recognition, an understanding. Helen said something to Principal Williams, who nodded and gestured toward Sarah's car. Sarah took a deep breath and got out of the car, leaving Jake safely buckled in his seat. Her legs felt unsteady as she walked toward the small group gathered at the school entrance. Helen Patterson looked older than her years, but her eyes were kind. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. You're Sarah Jenkins, aren't you? Sarah nodded, unable to speak. I'm Helen Patterson, Lucy's grandmother. I'm also the mother of David Patterson, who was supposed to adopt your daughter. The world seemed to tilt again. Was supposed to? What happened? Helen's eyes filled with tears. David and his wife Maria were killed in a car accident when Lucy was 2 years old. She came to live with me then. I've been raising her ever since. Sarah felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. The perfect family she had chosen, the stable home she had wanted for her daughter, had been destroyed by tragedy. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't the adoption agency contact me? The adoption was closed, dear. Legally, I had no obligation to find you, and to be honest, I wasn't sure you'd want to know. The papers you signed made it clear you wanted to move on with your life. Lucy tugged on her grandmother's sleeve. Tell her about the pictures, Grandma. Tell her about the box. Helen sighed, looking suddenly exhausted. Lucy, sweetheart, why? Don't you show your mother the picture you carry in your backpack? Lucy immediately began digging through her small pink backpack, finally pulling out a worn photograph. She handed it to Sarah with reverent care, as if it were made of gold. Sarah looked down at the photo and gasped. It was her high school graduation picture, the one from the small frame she had kept on her nightstand in that tiny apartment. She was 18 in the photo, her hair longer than she wore it now, her face fuller and younger, but unmistakably her. How do you have this? Sarah whispered. It was in Lucy's baby bag when she came to David and Maria, Helen explained, along with a few other things, a lullaby CD, a small blanket, and a letter. A letter? Helen nodded. A letter you wrote. To her, explaining why you had to give her up, telling her how much you loved her. David and Maria planned to give it to her when she was older, but after they died, I've been carrying it around for 4 years trying to decide if I should give it to her or not. Sarah stared at the photograph, memories flooding back. She remembered putting it in Lucy's bag at the last minute, wanting her daughter to have something to remember her by, even if she never knew who the woman in the picture was. She carries that picture everywhere, Helen continued. She told her kindergarten class that it was her mommy and that someday you'd come back for her. Lucy stepped closer to Sarah, her small hand reaching up to touch Sarah's face. I knew it was you, she said simply. You look just like your picture, only with shorter hair. Sarah knelt down to Lucy's eye level, her expensive suit creasing on the concrete. This close, she could see every detail of her daughter's face, the way her nose crinkled slightly when she smiled, the small dimple in her left cheek, the way her blonde curls caught the late afternoon sunlight. Can I hug you? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucy didn't answer with words. Instead, she launched herself into Sarah's arms with the absolute trust that only children possess. Sarah held her daughter for the first time in 6 years, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and playground dust, feeling the steady beat of Lucy's heart against her chest. I missed you so much, Mommy, Lucy murmured against Sarah's shoulder. I dreamed about you every night. Sarah closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I missed you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. Helen watched the reunion with mixed emotions playing across her weathered face. Principal Williams stood nearby, dabbing at her own eyes with a tissue. After what felt like both an eternity and no time at all, Sarah gently pulled back to look at Lucy again. You've grown so big and you're so beautiful. Lucy beamed. Grandma Helen says I look like you did when you were little. She has pictures of you from when you were in high school. Sarah looked up at Helen in surprise. You have pictures of me? Helen nodded. David and Maria did some research before the adoption. They wanted to know about Lucy's background, her medical history, that sort of thing. They found some photos from your school yearbook, some newspaper clippings from when you won that science fair in your senior year. You kept all of that? I kept everything, Helen said simply. I thought someday Lucy might want to know about her birth mother. I just never imagined she'd find you herself. Jake's voice called out from the car. Aunt Sarah, is everything okay? Sarah suddenly remembered her nephew, who had been patiently waiting through this emotional reunion. She stood up, keeping one hand on Lucy's shoulder. "Jake, would you like to come meet someone very special?" Jake unbuckled himself and climbed out of the car, approaching the group with the careful curiosity of childhood. He looked at Lucy with undisguised interest. "Are you really my aunt's daughter?" he asked with typical 6-year-old directness. Lucy nodded solemnly. "I think so." "Are you my brother?" "Cousin," Jake corrected. "But that's almost like a brother. Do you like superheroes?" And just like that, the two children began chatting as if they had known each other forever. Sarah watched in amazement as Lucy's shy demeanor transformed into something more animated and joyful. Helen touched Sarah's arm gently. "Could we talk privately for a moment?" They walked a few steps away from the children, who were now deep in discussion about Batman versus Spider-Man. "I need you to understand something," Helen said, her voice kind, but firm. "I love Lucy, as if she were my own granddaughter. These past 4 years haven't been easy. I'm 68 years old, and raising a young child at my age is challenging. But she's brought so much joy into my life after losing David." Sarah nodded, understanding the unspoken question. "I'm not here to take her away from you, Mrs. Patterson. I can see how much she loves you." Helen's shoulders relaxed slightly. "She does love me, but she's never stopped talking about her mother. She's never stopped hoping you'd come back. I've tried to prepare her for the possibility that you might not want to be found, but she never stopped believing," Sarah finished. "Exactly. And now here you are, and I can see in your eyes that this isn't what you planned for your life." Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching Lucy show Jake her stuffed rabbit. "No, it's not what I planned. I've spent 18 years building a very different life. I have a company to run, responsibilities, commitments that don't leave room for this?" "But," Helen prompted, sensing there was more. "But looking at her now, seeing how she's grown, knowing that she's been waiting for me, I can't just walk away again. I won't do that to her twice." Helen studied Sarah's face carefully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be part of her life if you'll let me. I know I can't just step in and be her mother overnight. You've been her mother for the past 4 years. But maybe we can figure out how to do this together." Helen was quiet for a long moment, watching the children play. "Lucy asks me every night if I think you still love her. I always tell her that mothers never stop loving their children, even when they can't be together. Was I right to tell her that?" Sarah felt tears threatening again. "Yes. God, yes, I never stopped loving her. I just convinced myself that loving her meant staying away. And now? Now I think maybe loving her means finding a way to stay." Principal Williams approached them. "I hate to interrupt, but I need to lock up the school building soon. Have you all figured out what happens next?" Sarah looked at Helen, who nodded encouragingly. "Mrs. Patterson, would you and Lucy like to come to dinner tomorrow night?" "Nothing. Fancy just a chance for us to talk more, for Lucy and Jake to spend some time together." Lucy, who had apparently been listening despite being occupied with Jake, let out a small squeal of excitement. "Really? Can we, Grandma Helen? Please?" Helen smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her. "I think that would be lovely." As they exchanged phone numbers and made plans, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope mixed with terror, excitement tangled with responsibility. Her carefully ordered life was about to become much more complicated. Jake tugged on her sleeve. "Aunt Sarah, does this mean Lucy might come to my birthday party next month?" Sarah looked at Lucy, who was practically bouncing with excitement at the prospect. "Would you like to come to Jake's birthday party?" Sarah asked. "Yes. I've never been to a cousin's birthday party before." As they all prepared to leave, Lucy suddenly ran back to Sarah and hugged her legs tightly. "You're really not going to disappear again, are you?" Sarah knelt down once more, taking her daughter's small hands in hers. "I promise you, Lucy, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out together, okay?" Lucy nodded, her face shining with happiness. "Okay, Mommy." As Sarah drove Jake home, her mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. Tomorrow she would have to call her lawyers, figure out the legal implications of reconnecting. With a daughter she had given up for adoption, She would have to rearrange her schedule, rethink her priorities, maybe even restructure her entire life. But for the first time in 18 years, the thought didn't terrify her. Instead, it filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since she was 19 years old and holding her newborn daughter in her arms. The next evening, Sarah stood in her modern kitchen, staring at the ingredients she had bought to make spaghetti and meatballs, Lucy's favorite meal according to Helen. Her hands shook slightly as she tried to remember how to make something more complicated than her usual salad or takeout dinner. Emma arrived early to help, bringing Jake with her. "You look terrified," Emma observed, tying an apron around her waist. "It's just dinner, Sarah. You've hosted million-dollar client dinners without breaking a sweat." "This is different," Sarah said, opening and closing cabinet doors without really seeing what was inside them. "Those clients weren't my daughter who I abandoned for 6 years. You didn't abandon her," Emma said firmly. "You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. There's a difference." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Sarah smoothed down her casual sweater, the most informal outfit she had worn in years, and went to answer the door. Helen stood on the doorstep holding Lucy's hand. Lucy had clearly dressed up for the occasion, wearing a pretty blue dress and shiny black shoes. Her hair was braided with small ribbons, and she clutched a drawing in her free hand. "Hi," Sarah said, suddenly feeling awkward in her own home. "Hi, Mommy," Lucy said shyly, then held up her drawing. "I made this for you." The picture showed 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. One was tall with reddish hair, the other small with yellow curls. At the bottom, in careful kindergarten handwriting, Lucy had written, "Me and my mommy." Sarah's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, Lucy, thank you." Jake came running to the door, his earlier shyness completely gone. "Lucy, come see my room, I have a new Lego set." The children disappeared upstairs, leaving the 3 adults standing in the entryway. Helen looked around Sarah's house with undisguised amazement. The high ceilings, the expensive furniture, the art on the walls. "You've done very well for yourself," Helen said, not unkindly. Sarah followed her gaze, seeing her home through Helen's eyes. It was beautiful, but cold, more like a showpiece than a place where a family lived. "I worked very hard to get here. I can see that. The question is, are you happy?" It was such a simple question, but Sarah found she couldn't answer it easily. Was she happy? She had thought she was, but happiness had become synonymous with success, with achievement, with proving that she could rise above her circumstances. Emma saved her from having to respond by calling them to dinner. They gathered around Sarah's formal dining table, which had never been used for anything more family-oriented than business dinners. Lucy climbed into her chair and looked around with wide eyes. "This is the fanciest dinner ever," she announced. "It's like eating in a castle." Throughout the meal, Sarah found herself watching Lucy intently, cataloging every gesture, every expression. The way Lucy carefully twirled her spaghetti, the way she listened with complete attention when the adults spoke, the way she included everyone in the conversation with the natural social skills of a child who had been raised with love and attention. "Grandma Helen taught me to cook," Lucy announced proudly. "I can make scrambled eggs and grilled cheese sandwiches. Well, Grandma Helen has to help me with the stove part, but I can crack the eggs all by myself." "That's very impressive," Sarah said. "I'm not much of a cook myself." Lucy looked shocked. "But mommies are supposed to cook. That's what they do on TV." Helen chuckled. "Not all mommies cook, sweetheart. Some mommies have other special talents." "What's your special talent, Mommy?" Lucy asked, turning her full attention to Sarah. Sarah found herself at a loss. How did you explain corporate strategy and market analysis to a 6-year-old? "Well, I run a company that makes computer programs that help other companies work better." Lucy nodded as if this made perfect sense. "So you're good with computers?" "I suppose I am." "Could you teach me? I want to learn everything you know so I can be just like you when I grow up." The simple statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. This little girl who barely knew her wanted to be like her. The weight of that responsibility was both terrifying and humbling. After dinner, while Helen and Emma cleaned up despite Sarah's protests, Sarah found herself alone with Lucy in the living room. Lucy was examining the framed awards and certificates that lined Sarah's mantelpiece. "You won a lot of prizes," Lucy observed. "I suppose I have." Lucy was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Did you win all these after you gave me away?" The question was asked without accusation, but it cut deeper than any angry words could have. Sarah sat down on the couch and patted the space beside her. Lucy climbed up, snuggling close in the way that children do naturally. "Lucy, I need you to understand something very important. I didn't give you away because I didn't love you. I gave you away because I did love you, more than anything in the world." Lucy looked up at her with those familiar blue-green eyes. "But if you loved me, why couldn't you keep me? How did you explain poverty to a child? How did you explain the terror of being 19 and alone, with no family support, no money, no way to provide the kind of life you wanted for your baby? When you were born, I was very young, and I didn't have much money. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to take good care of you, that I wouldn't be able to give you all the things you deserved, so I found a family who could give you everything I couldn't. But they died," Lucy said matter-of-factly. "And then I went to live with Grandma Helen, and she doesn't have much money either. But we're happy." The simple wisdom of a child. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "You're right. Money isn't the most important thing. Love is. But back then I was too scared and too young to understand that." Lucy was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then she asked, "Do you understand it now?" "I'm starting to." Lucy smiled, the brilliant, trusting smile of a child who had decided to forgive. "Good, because I don't need fancy things. I just need you to love me and not go away again." "I love you so much, Lucy, and I promise I won't go away again." Later that evening, after Helen and Lucy had gone home, Sarah sat in her home office trying to work but finding it impossible to concentrate. Emma found her there, staring blankly at her computer screen. "How are you processing all of this?" Emma asked, settling into the chair across from Sarah's desk. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Part of me feels like I'm living in a dream, like this can't really be happening. And part of me feels like I'm finally waking up from a dream I've been having for 18 years. "What do you mean?" Sarah gestured around her office with its awards and achievements displayed on every surface. "Look at all of this, Emma. I built this entire life to prove that I could succeed, that giving up Lucy was worth something, but what if it wasn't? What if I could have kept her and still been successful? What if I gave up the most important thing in my life for nothing?" "You can't think like that," Emma said gently. "You made the best decision you could with the information you had at the time. You were 19, Sarah. You were alone and scared. But she's been waiting for me all this time. 6 years old, and she's been carrying my picture around, telling people I'm her mommy, believing I would come back for her. What kind of person does that make me? It makes you human. It makes you someone who made a difficult choice and now has a chance to make things right." Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled to the photos she had taken during dinner. Lucy helping in the kitchen, Lucy and Jake playing together, Lucy sitting at the dining table with sauce on her chin and joy in her eyes. "I don't know how to be a mother, Emma. I've spent so many years focusing on business, on success, on building walls around my heart. What if I'm not good at it? What if I let her down again?" "Then you'll learn," Emma said simply. "Just like every other parent in the world. The difference is you have Helen to help you, and Lucy is old enough to tell you what she needs." Sarah's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. The caller ID showed Helen's number. "Hello?" Sarah answered. "Sarah, I hope I'm not calling too late." Helen's voice sounded strained. "Not at all. Is everything okay?" "It's Lucy. She's having a nightmare. She woke up crying, saying she dreamed that tonight was just pretend, that you were going to disappear again. I've been trying to calm her down, but she keeps asking for you. Would it be possible for you to talk to her?" Sarah's heart clenched. "Of course. Put her on." There was some rustling, Then Lucy's small, tearful voice came through the phone. "Mommy, are you still there?" "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I had a bad dream. I dreamed that dinner was just make-believe, and when I woke up tomorrow, you would be gone again." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her daughter's fear. "Lucy, listen to me. It wasn't make-believe, okay? Tonight was real, and tomorrow I'll still be here. And the day after that, and the day after that. Promise?" "I promise. And you know what? Tomorrow is Saturday. Would you like to spend the day with me? Maybe we could go to the park or the zoo or wherever you want to go." Lucy's voice brightened immediately. "Really? Just me and you? Just me and you? Can we get ice cream?" Sarah laughed, the first genuine laugh she had felt in days. "We can definitely get ice cream." After saying goodnight and hanging up, Sarah looked at Emma, who had been watching with a knowing smile. "You're going to be fine," Emma said. "You're already thinking like a mother again." That night, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. She would need to rearrange her schedule, delegate more responsibility to her team, maybe even step back from some of her business commitments. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it filled her with an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time in 18 years, she had something more important than her career to focus on. She had a daughter who needed her, who loved her despite everything, who was giving her a second chance she never thought she would have. And this time, she wasn't going to waste it. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the doorway of what used to be her home office, watching as 2 delivery men assembled a small desk and bookshelf. The room was being transformed into Lucy's bedroom. For the weekends she would spend at Sarah's house. The transition hadn't been easy. There had been legal consultations, family court appearances, and countless conversations with social workers. Helen had been incredibly gracious throughout the process, understanding that Lucy needed both of them in different ways. They had worked out an arrangement where Lucy would spend weekdays with Helen, who lived closer to her school, and weekends with Sarah. "The desk is perfect, Mommy," Lucy said, running her hands over the smooth white surface. "It's just my size." Sarah smiled, remembering the hours she had spent researching child-appropriate furniture online. 3 months ago, she wouldn't have known the first thing about what a 6-year-old needed in a bedroom. Now she could recite the safety standards for children's furniture from memory. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "The Morrison meeting has been moved to Tuesday. Will you be able to attend?" Sarah looked at the text, then at Lucy, who was now arranging her stuffed animals on the new bookshelf. "Lucy, I have a business meeting on Tuesday. Would you like to come to my office and see where Mommy works?" Lucy's eyes widened. "Really? Can I see where you make the computer programs?" "Absolutely. But you'll have to be very quiet during the meeting." "I can be quiet. I'm very good at being quiet." Sarah's heart twinged at the comment. Lucy had learned to be quiet, to be patient, to be good, because she had spent years trying to earn love and attention. It was a habit Sarah was working hard to break. The phone rang, and Helen's number appeared on the screen. Sarah had come to look forward to these daily check-ins, and she and Helen had developed a friendship built on their mutual love for Lucy. "How's the room coming along?" Helen asked. "It's beautiful. Lucy is arranging her things right now. How was school today?" "Good, though Mrs. Peterson mentioned that Lucy has been telling everyone about her bedroom at her mommy's house. Some of the other children are asking questions about why she has 2 houses." Sarah frowned. This was something they had worried about, how to explain Lucy's unusual family situation to her classmates and teachers. "What kind of questions?" "Nothing mean, just curiosity. You know how children are." Lucy handled it very well, actually. She told them that some families look different than others and that she's lucky because she has 2 homes where people love her. Sarah felt a surge of pride. "She said that?" "She did. She's a wise little girl, Sarah. She understands more than we sometimes give her credit for." After hanging up, Sarah found Lucy in the kitchen carefully making herself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Another new skill she had mastered since coming into Sarah's life. Sarah had learned that 6-year-olds were much more capable than she had imagined. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" Lucy said, not looking up from her sandwich. "Of course, sweetheart. Do you wish things had been different? Like, do you wish you had kept me when I was a baby instead of giving me to David and Maria?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Lucy had been asking more complex questions lately, trying to understand her own history and place in the world. Sarah sat down at the kitchen island beside her daughter. "That's a really hard question, Lucy. I wish a lot of things had been different. I wish David and Maria hadn't died in that accident. I wish I had been older and wiser when you were born. I wish I had known then what I know now." "What do you know now that you didn't know then?" "I know that love is more important than money. I know that being scared doesn't mean you can't be a good parent. And I know that you are the most amazing, strong, beautiful girl in the world, and I'm so proud to be your mommy." Lucy smiled, taking a bite of her sandwich. "I'm proud to be your daughter too, even if it took us a long time to find each other." That evening, as Sarah tucked Lucy into her new bed, Lucy asked another question that had become part of their nightly routine. "Will you sing to me?" Sarah began to sing Rainbow Connection, the same song she had sung to Lucy as a baby. Her voice was rusty, she hadn't sung in years, but Lucy didn't seem to mind. She closed her eyes and smiled, her hand holding tight to Sarah's. "Mommy?" "Yes, baby?" "I love our life." "I love our life too." After Lucy fell asleep, Sarah went to her own bedroom and called her business partner, Michael, who had been incredibly understanding about her recent schedule changes. "How's the transition going?" he asked. "Better than I expected." "Different than I expected. I keep waiting for it to feel overwhelming, but instead it feels right. Like this is what I was supposed to be doing all along. The Morrison deal is going to require some travel next month. Will that be a problem?" Sarah had been dreading this conversation. The Morrison deal was potentially worth millions to her company, but it would require her to spend 2 weeks in London. 3 months ago, she wouldn't have hesitated. Now, the thought of being away from Lucy for 2 weeks felt impossible. "Let me think about it," she said. "Maybe we can work out a way to handle most of it remotely." After hanging up, Sarah sat in her bedroom, looking at the framed photo on her nightstand. The same high school graduation photo that Lucy had carried for years, now sitting next to a new picture of her and Lucy at the zoo. Her phone buzzed, with an email from a journalist wanting to interview her about balancing motherhood and running a successful business. 6 months ago, she would have declined. Her personal life had always been strictly private. But now she found herself considering it. Maybe her story could help other women who faced similar, impossible choices. The next morning, Sarah woke to the smell of pancakes cooking. She found Lucy in the kitchen with Helen, who had arrived early to help with breakfast. "We wanted to surprise you," Lucy announced proudly. "I helped flip them myself." As they sat around the kitchen table eating pancakes and bacon, Sarah realized this was what happiness felt like. Not the achievement-based satisfaction she had mistaken for happiness for so many years, but something deeper and more complete. "Grandma Helen, will you tell the story about when Mommy was my age?" Lucy asked. Helen smiled and began to recount a story she had found in Sarah's old school records about how Sarah had won a science fair in 1st grade with a project about plants. Lucy listened with rapt attention, hungry for every detail about her mother's childhood. "I want to enter the science fair too," Lucy announced when Helen finished. "Maybe I inherited your smart genes." "You definitely inherited my smart genes," Sarah said. "But you inherited something even better." "What?" "You inherited your kind heart from yourself. That's all you, baby girl." Later that afternoon, as Sarah worked in her home office while Lucy played nearby, she made a decision. She called Michael back. "About the Morrison deal," she said. "I want to bring my daughter with me to London." "Are you sure? It's a pretty intensive 2 weeks." "I'm sure. She's never been out of the country, and I think it's time she sees more of the world. Besides, I've learned that she's pretty adaptable." As she hung up, Lucy looked up from her coloring book. "Are we going on an airplane, Mommy?" "How did you hear that?" "I have very good ears." Are we really going to London? Would you like to go to London with me? Lucy jumped up and ran over to Sarah's chair, climbing into her lap. Yes. Will we see the big clock tower and the red buses and maybe the Queen? Sarah laughed, holding her daughter close. We'll see what we can manage. That night, as Sarah read Lucy a bedtime story, Lucy interrupted her mid-sentence. Mommy, I have something important to tell you. What's that, sweetheart? I forgive you. Sarah's breath caught. Forgive me for what? For giving me away when I was little. I understand now that you were trying to do what was best for me. And besides, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have lived with Grandma Helen, and I love her too. Sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to, even if they seem wrong at first. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Here was her 6-year-old daughter offering forgiveness for something Sarah was still learning to forgive herself for. Thank you, Lucy. That means everything to me. And Mommy, I'm really glad you found me at school that day, even if it was an accident. Me too, baby. Me too. As Sarah turned off the light and headed to her own room, she reflected on how completely her life had changed. 3 months ago, she had been a successful businesswoman with no family complications, no unexpected responsibilities, no small person depending on her for love and security. Her life had been predictable, controlled, and ultimately empty. Now her life was messier, more complicated, and absolutely full of bedtime stories and peanut butter sandwiches, of kindergarten art projects on her refrigerator, and toys scattered around her pristine house. Full of a love she had forgotten, she was capable of feeling. She had spent 18 years climbing toward success, thinking that reaching the top would make her complete. But it turned out that everything she needed had been waiting for her in the form of a 6-year-old girl, with blue-green eyes and an unshakable belief in love. Sarah Martinez, CEO and mother, finally understood what it meant to have it all.